Good evening. This is a special meeting convened to consider resolutions. I am President Cynthia Elliott, and we will go through this very quickly, and then we will move into our discussion with our search firm for the superintendent. And so I'm calling this meeting to order, and we have no speakers for this special meeting, and we have three resolutions, and I'm going to ask if I can bundle them, if that's okay with everyone, that a motion for resolutions 203, 204, and 205.
Motion.
Moved by Vice President LeBron. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Simmons. Any questions or comments related to resolutions 203, 204, and 205? Vice President?
Yeah. One, I want to apologize that I was not able to be here last Thursday, but this is actually a comment sort of directed to the superintendent and to legal. I actually would like to see if you all can prepare a legal memo to the board around mandated services and whether we vote for them or not. It's my understanding mandated services, whether the board approves it or not, the district is still required to do so, and it sort of null and voids us even having to vote on this. So if we can get a memo and an understanding for the board on mandated special education services, that's my only request, but I will be supporting this, especially because it's mandated services. Thank you.
And let me also recognize Commissioner Santiago, who's joining us by Zoom. Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening.
All right, so any other questions related to resolutions 203? Commissioner Malloy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to our staff members who provided additional information so that not only our commissioners who weren't here last time could vote, but also just some of the questions that I had. And I will be voting yes tonight. I support all of these organizations, and certainly I support all of our mandated services. But I'm glad that we had the opportunity to hear these resolutions again so that we could vote on them as a full board. And I want to say thank you to the superintendent just for directing your staff. And I really do appreciate the information that was provided. I think there are still some questions regarding services and with some of our nonprofits and some of the contracts and subcontract work that could potentially happen. I think that perhaps this might be more geared towards conversations when we have our guardrail conversations for our student outcome-focused governance work. That's a conversation for those meetings moving forward. But there are some related questions, but it's not specific to the Center for Youth or the other organization. But I do think that there are some overarching questions that I'd love for us to address as a board moving forward. But again, I think all of our nonprofits that we have contract services with and fully support all of our mandated services for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Commissioner Simmons?
Yes, I just want to acknowledge the resolutions and that I am happy to be present to be able to support mandated services. And we have, I've been able to observe a lot of the those particular services in condition to Resolution 204 and recognize how powerful those services are. So I'm happy to see that we are in a position to move forward with them.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Commissioner Griffin?
I too agree with and for mandated services. However, with every contract, we should be having deliverables that explain the goals that we are reaching and what we are trying to obtain for our children and our student outcomes. That information should be forthcoming regardless if it's mandated or not, because that is what is required by New York State. If we don't know what the services are being provided and if we are meeting the goals with no data, how are we assured that our children are being given the information that they need to be successful? So here again, I agree with mandated services, but as a board member, I am committed to student outcomes, and with no deliverables and no data to say that they have actually achieved the goals that we have put in place, then that leads to us to not know what's going on with our children. So I think it's important that one and two things, that we give the contract deliverables to the board members, because the administration should be providing that, forthcoming, and also that information should be coming from Center for Youth, Pathways to Peace, IBERO, and everyone else. So I agree with mandated services, but going forward, we need to make sure that the board is given the information they need so that we can be most effective in reaching our student outcomes and our goals that we have been provided to us. Thank you.
All right, so let me just interject here before I go to Commissioner Santiago. We just went into a board retreat that said to us that this kind of information is not what we should be requesting from the superintendent, that what we should be focusing in on is the outcomes of our board goals. This is where we're getting into the weeds. Now, we just went through this retreat, and I would remind us as a board that we need to be focused in on the goals, not getting into the weeds. That's what Council Great City Schools just talked to us about. So I'm going to say that that we look at not asking those questions, because our responsibility is to get the information from the goals. If he's not meeting those goals, then that's where our focus should be, not on the weeds and not on the guardrails. I'm going to go to Commissioner Santiago, then I'll come back to you all. Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, I just want to say that that I plan to support this resolution. I was definitely, my heart was heavy after the last meeting, seeing these resolutions fell due to information that we already get as commissioners, and so I just want to, put that out there. I think, as we speak about accountability and things of that sort, with the last meeting and seeing mandated services for our young people and our special education students be declined for information that was already attached to the resolutions was pretty sad to see. And so my hopes is that it passes again, that it passes this meeting. But we do have that information. We do get that information. It's just us as commissioners have to read the information that we get. And I know when I was looking through the resolution, I saw the information that I was being. So I hope that it passes tonight. And of course, I support it.
Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you so much. And I think that, in terms of being in the weeds, no, we shouldn't be in the weeds. I've been through this training for 2 years. You've had 2 days of training on it. And so when I brought up some of my concerns via email, I think I was pretty clear at what I was asking for, and I don't think that was in the weeds at all. I think that that's why I mentioned guardrails prior to everything else. I mentioned how we are going to be setting guardrails as a board.
The superintendent sets the guardrails.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So
All
the
right.
superintendent actually, well, we set the guardrails, actually. He sets the interim goals and the interim guardrails, okay? So we all have a lot of training to do on this work still, but if that was construed as being in the weeds, I assure you it was not. It had everything to do with
It is in the
student
weeds.
outcomes.
Commissioner Griffin? We just have to agree to disagree, because if that's the kind of level that we're going to get into, it's going to impact what the superintendent is going to be charged with, and we need to be focused on the goals, not this other stuff. We don't
Absolutely.
need that information.
Absolutely, we
Commissioner
are
Griffin?
focused on our goals.
I just want to make it clear that in order for us to reach a goal, we have to, as a board, make sure that the things that administration is doing is not going to affect our goals. And if it is, we have to address just that bare minimum. And for that reason is why we, as a board, should make sure that we have all the valuable information so that we are reaching our goals. And part of that is having the receivables, the contract deliverables, the quantitative and qualitative measures. I am not going to get in the weeds, but I am here to protect the taxpayers, the stakeholders, and our children. And I'm not going to approve an organization or something that is not moving our district in the right direction as far as our student outcomes. So that is not the weeds. That's the bread and butter of what we're here to do as a board.
This is the goal. Our charge is to ensure that the superintendent is meeting the goals, not getting into the other stuff. We were just taught that. I don't care how many days I was there. I did learn that.
May I speak?
Right, I did learn that. And so we are supposed to focus in on the goals. We cannot, now, if we need to get a vote, that information that you're requesting does not happen, because we've got to focus in on the goals. Commissioner Simmons.
Yes, I would just like to implore to my colleagues here on the board
Yeah.
that we have resolutions before us. I believe that our responsibility this evening is to vote on these resolutions based on our knowledge, based on what we understand, based on our truth. That's what we need to do. As far as the discourse that is playing out here on the dais, I think is putting adult behaviors above students.
Well, let me just say.
So I do want
Yeah.
to recognize that we all have been through the training, and we recognize that we have a long way to go. Being introduced to the training is one piece. the consistency and moving forward with the training is where we will develop. We are not going to be superstars overnight, but we do need to focus on these resolutions.
Well, let me
and
just
make this
say,
decision.
I respectfully disagree on this one because I think that this is the kind of conversation, because I don't see it unless my commissioners, my colleagues see it as something that is disruptive. I'm seeing it as an engagement. And so they can understand, so I can understand where they're coming from as well. So I think that the conversation is necessary.
Okay.
I still respect my colleagues, but we have differences of opinion. And so I think we can move on, but I think it needed to be clear from their perspective and mine where we're supposed to be heading towards. Vice President LeBron?
Yeah, for me, I'm sort of stuck and focused on the mandated services piece, especially the fact that that is driven by an individual education plan for each student. And based on that IEP, that is what drives, are we expecting that the superintendent is going to give us the information of every single student who has an IEP and what those IEP needs are? Because that's the level of information that you want to try to align to how the goals are going to be met. I think that's sort of ridiculous, but that is just my opinion. However, back to this mandated New York State by law services, and I do think that the board needs some information, education around regular resolutions that you may have a little bit more say in, but not when it comes to special education and mandated services. And let me just say, and I'll wrap up with this because this is my daughter's challenge and fight as she's moved forward in this district with kids with IEPs, that if I was my daughter at this moment and I heard this board meeting going back and forth from individuals who don't have IEPs, individuals who don't have a student currently in this district with an IEP that have to navigate these things, and you're denying my child services because you have a misunderstanding of what mandated services are. If I was a parent with special needs and I had a student with an IEP right now, I would be down here really attacking this board. And I just want to put that out there. I'm not asking for the public to come and attack the board.